Hey everybody, how's it going? My name's Mayuko and welcome back to my channel. So on this channel, I've shared a lot of my own tips about how to get that coveted first job as a software engineer in the tech industry. But in an effort to just invite more voices to my channel and really provide good industry tips and experiences and stuff, I had a recruiter on my show, Muko's Corner, to talk about the inside scoop about the recruiting process. I talked to Sarah, who's the lead negotiator at Levels.fyi, and she's also a former recruiter at Amazon, Facebook, and Google, so she really knows her stuff. In the show, we talked about how the recruiting process works from the inside, which you can watch in the card linked up above, but in this video, I'm gonna share with you the tips that she mentioned on the show about how to get that first job. I mean, she's someone who's definitely seen tens, if not hundreds of thousands of applications, so she really knows the do's and don'ts of what to do to get that first job. So I'm gonna be sharing highlights from that show where we'll talk about things like how to stand out as an applicant, how to prepare for the tech interview, and more. I know that I definitely would have benefited so much from this information in college, so I hope this helps you as well. And thank you to Brilliant for sponsoring today's video. So let's dive in. Now let's walk through the kind of interview process. And I'm gonna walk us through specifically from a candidate's perspective, because I think a lot of the people viewing this are kind of on the candidate side. So I guess step 0 is applying to the role. We're gonna zero index things. That's what we have to do first. So what's the most recommended tactic for how new grads can go about applying to jobs? I think I want to also tap into kind of the trade-off between quality versus quantity. Should I be applying to 200 jobs a week, or should I be building relationships with specific people and really working hard at a couple or a few applications?
Yeah, so in terms of I would say number one thing is stay updated with your social media, because when a job opens, like I said earlier, it goes really fast, and some companies choose to take it down after 2 weeks because the amount of applicants they have is just insane. So make sure that you stay updated. A lot of companies like Salesforce, Microsoft, even Amazon put a lot of events together. Go to those, because for a recruiter, and I've done events a few times at Amazon, where if you show up to those events, we want to reward you. We want to thank you for taking the time to come in and interact with our team. So sometimes too, you automatically get a link for the take-home assignment, versus someone who didn't go to the event, they would have to apply, and then you kind of now relying on a recruiter to click yes on your application and send that link to you. Versus if you go to their events, you automatically get that first link. And then if you pass that, that's when the recruiter will work with you in terms of moving you through the first process. It's really, I feel take home assignment just have such a bad rap to it, but because we're operating so much in terms of volume, we just want to make sure that we're spending our time a little bit more productive and efficiently here. We want to talk to candidate who can at least pass the computer science fundamentals. So go to those events. Even Google have a lot of events too, either live or even on their YouTube channel. Watch those videos in terms of what the interviewers are looking for. The company did spend a lot of time and effort to put together those material for the candidates. The second thing is there's a lot more different revenue that a recruiter would have to go and look for candidate, not just applicants alone, like I mentioned earlier. And where do we look for candidate? Number one is going to be LinkedIn. So make sure that your LinkedIn profile is optimized with keywords. And it's really, I have so many friends that come to me and say well, I've been applying to so many different jobs and no one ever got back to me. And when I looked at their resume or their LinkedIn profile, I can't tell that they are software engineer, because the title would be something like member of technical staff or something technical. But I'm just are you a software engineer? Or are you not a software engineer? I'm confused. And they were that's the reason why a recruiter can't find you, because there isn't software engineer anywhere on your application. So make sure that you optimize your LinkedIn. That's the biggest thing. And then number 3 is I love TripleByte. At Facebook, I would go to TripleByte to source for candidates. And a lot of companies are, have the same thing too. Another website would be hire.com. So beyond just LinkedIn, be a little bit more creative about, where else that you can get that yes from the recruiter. And with TripleByte too, as a company, we have to pay money to look for candidates. So like, spend the time to kind of do the tests and things like that. HackerRank also is another good resource too. And then build relationship with people. Hackathon would be a really great way to ramp up your resume if you don't have any experience. Build relationship in terms of, maybe another hiring manager or another software engineer. I would say the best way to really utilize your LinkedIn is don't just reach out to manager, don't just reach out to the recruiter. Reach out to someone who was once in your shoes. Let's say if I come across, let's say I want to be a software engineer and I go through LinkedIn or Facebook, for example, and I saw someone who's been at Facebook for 1 year, I would want to reach out to that person and ask, hey, I came across your profile and it's, what you're doing is very inspiring. And I saw that you've been at Facebook for 1 year. Is it possible for us to connect? I would love to learn more about how the process was like for you. What else that you can learn? What else that I can learn from you? And like that person's more inclined to say yes or talk to you because that person isn't bombarded with like 500 messages per day on LinkedIn. And like they are more relatable and like what the advice that they can give you is a lot more relatable too. So I would say instead of reaching out to hiring manager or recruiter, do reach out to the people that once were in your shoes.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow, so many good tips just now. Okay, wait, I want to click into some of these things. So the first thing that you said was, the first tip was going to events that companies put on at their campus, which totally makes sense. I've been on the side of like helping put these events on, and it takes work and effort and resources and time and money. And so of course you're going to reward the people who go because recruiting from the company side is not cheap. Like it takes so much effort to get that thing to happen, I guess. For anybody who wants to find out about these events but is having trouble doing so, do you have any advice for like how do you even find out about these events that are happening on your campus?
LinkedIn. So on the company page, like LinkedIn would be like the best way to kind of stay updated. Another thing would be the YouTube channel. Because like Google would announce all the event on YouTube, and then the last one is going to be Eventbrite, I think. I use Eventbrite, Amazon, and yeah, to your point earlier, it takes a lot of work to put an event together. And from a recruiter perspective, like I know that my upper management will ask me in terms of like ROI and metrics. I can't just put together an event, and there isn't a way for me to measure my ROI unless if I send candidates that take-home assignment, and then from there present, like, oh, we put out this event and it cost us this much, and on top of that, we ended up getting X amount of candidates, and then here's our conversion rate. So like that's the only way for us to, measure our ROI. So that would be like the best way for you to get noticed for your resume and kind of like get through that round of the interview.
That makes sense. Yeah. For those of you not familiar with ROI, that's return on investment. So yeah, it's like anytime a company puts on stuff, they're investing money and resources on something. So they want that return in some way. And if it's a recruiting event, they're literally looking for candidates to hire. Or at least just to spread the word about a company, because maybe, they filled headcount, but they still want people to know that this is a company that will hire next year, next season, or they're looking for a specific kind of person. So that's super helpful to know. Okay, the second tip that you provided was updating your LinkedIn and making sure that it looks good, like you have all the keywords and stuff. And one of the things you mentioned was like making sure that it looks like you have the word software developer, software engineer on it. And I was just thinking about it, like from a student's perspective, for someone who hasn't worked full time before as a software developer, I know that there's this hesitancy to be like, if I've never been paid to be a software engineer anymore, like before, can I call myself a software engineer? So I know that can be kind of like a crisis that people can have, especially in that tagline of like, what is your role and who are you? Do you feel like if you've never had a full-time role before, is it okay to put that in the job description? Like, is it okay to be like, this is what I'm shooting for, so this is who I am? Is that an okay tactic?
Yeah, so in terms of like how would you identify yourself, right? Because LinkedIn is not like a resume, it's not like a legally binding contract. It's just another platform of social media. Like I can call myself whatever I want on Instagram, but you probably want to be more strategic about like what you put on your LinkedIn. And there's that about sections that you can be very specific about, you know, your software engineer, aspiring software engineer, and then what type of engineering that you specialize in. Are you full stack web, or are you back end, are you Python? And I really love when I go through a LinkedIn profile and they tell me that, like I'm a back end web development engineer or something like that. And then in that about section, you can do a lot with keywords. It doesn't have to be from the experience alone. And in terms of the experience, there's so many ways for you to kind of get that experience too. I know that for Microsoft, if you just do like a few hackathon, they count that as experience. Another way for you to ramp up your experience is open source projects. You actually get to interact with engineers that are in the company. You get to learn about like, oh, okay, I have to, you know, make sure that my code it makes sense and my code wouldn't break like their code and things like that. And I know a lot of my friends was able to leverage open source to get jobs, full-time position, even for self-taught folks too. And then another way is internship or any project that you have. You can call yourself software engineer, the name of the project, and then kind of bullet points like your accomplishment, what did you do and how did you get to that point.
So Sarah, from your perspective, what can students do to prepare for their interviews?
When you get to the final interview, a lot of people just have this misconception that they have to be really good in tech. And the interview would just center around like lead coding questions. Actually, the answer is not really. I've had engineers who maybe didn't do so well on the tech side, but they demonstrate really good soft skill and they ended up getting an offer. So when you get to that final stage, the company will index on both tech and soft skill. So for the soft skills, I'm just going to touch on this really quickly. A lot of students didn't prepare for this portion. And the question is usually in the format of, can you tell me about a time that you X, what did you do? What was the end outcome? And a lot of people didn't come prepared for this. And a lot of students ended up sharing like personal story about maybe a time that they overcome hardship or overcome challenge and things like that. As interviewer, I can't document that. From a legal perspective, if you share anything personal, I might just have to kind of acknowledge that in the interview setting, like, thank you for sharing that. Do you have a different example? And usually when I ask that question or interviewers ask that question, we want concrete example of a time that it actually happened and how you navigated that situation. And 80% of the students that I talk to, they would give me hypothetical example of like, oh, well, if it happened, I would do this. And I would just have to remind them like, okay, did it happen? Can you tell me something that actually happened? So prepare for those examples would be super helpful. I would say keep in the back of your mind, like prepare like 5 to 7 examples and then make sure that you structure them in a STAR method, and that stands for situation, task, actions, and results. Make sure that you prepare and rehearse it a few times just so that you don't end up like rambling during the interview. And then be prepared for follow-up questions too. This is another thing where, let's say I ask that question, tell me about a time ABCD, and I just wanted to ask follow-up questions and the student just thought that they did something wrong or the answer wasn't correct and they just completely like shut down. So I see that happen a lot. It's like, it's very normal. The interviewer just want to ask more follow-up questions just so that we can write clear feedback in order to, make a case for you later if we think that you're a strong candidate. So don't freak out when that happens. And then on the tech side, obviously lead code, but the thing is, if you have the cleanest solution, but you couldn't talk through it, you probably wouldn't get a yes from the interviewer. So usually an interviewer would look for that this candidate asks good clarifying questions. And the questions are usually really ambiguous. It's designed that way because they want you to ask those questions first before you jump into problem solving mode. And then after you ask a clarifying question, be sure to talk through your thought process. And then open to hints and feedback. So this is the biggest thing. We know that you don't have a lot of experience. We're going to have to coach you. We're going to have to mentor you. We're going to have to develop you. And the biggest thing that we look for here is not the cleanest solution. We're looking for how coachable you are. And a lot of the times the interviewer would try to give hints or see if this candidate is stuck, are they proactive about asking for hints? Are they proactive about asking for help? And there are so many times when the interviewer tried to give hints and the students or the candidate just didn't listen at all, and they just kept going. So then from an interviewer perspective, they now raise an issue of, well, I may have an issue with coachability because I try to give hints so many times and they didn't listen. So you don't need to have like the best answer. Make sure that you communicate. Ask clarifying questions, talk through your thought process, open to hints and feedback. So those are like the three things that you always need to do in the technical interview.
That makes sense. It turns out that there's a lot of soft skills that comes through even in the technical interview. So one of the things I think about is just like cracking the coding interview book, right? That everybody studies from all the time. The behavioral part is like this thin versus the technical stuff is like this thick. But in reality, it's actually a part of everything else. And sometimes the behavioral stuff is weighted at least equally, if not more, than the technical side. So thank you so much for sharing that. For someone who just like doesn't really know exactly what kind of role they want to go into, is it better for them to choose and say like, okay, I don't really know, but I think backend, sure, let's do backend because I like my backend class the most. Is it better to do that, or is it better to like talk about all of your breadth of experiences and kind of just be like, I like everything? Help. Like, from a recruiter's perspective, what works better?
From a recruiter perspective, I would say, you can explore, but in terms of like a resume and LinkedIn perspective, think of it as like it's your marketing, your branding, your brochure. You want to put like the best on there, right? And from a recruiter perspective, when I see too many question mark on a resume, I usually just pass on that resume because I just don't want to hop on a call with someone and then ask them those questions and they say no, and then it would be like, okay, I have to reject you. Like, it's safer for me to just pass and not being put in a difficult situation to reject that candidate later. Another thing too is I know that if a resume has too many things going on and I present that resume to my hiring manager, they will tell me no. So I already know what my manager is going to say, and therefore I also will reject that resume. Another thing too is like whatever you put on your resume is fair game. If you only took a course on Coursera about machine learning and AI, please don't claim that you're a machine learning and an AI engineer on your resume, because we do have a meeting before the interview happen, and all of the interviewers will look at this resume and say, okay, based on this resume, we want to calibrate you correctly. We want to ask the right questions. And let's say I had this incident happen where one of the candidates, for whatever reason, other team didn't say yes to this person, and the machine learning and AI team decided to say yes to this candidate, and they ended up tailor the interview just around like machine learning and AI, like domain specific, and this candidate didn't do so well. So whatever you put on your resume, just know that they might ask you or bring it up during the interview process. So you want to be good at one thing instead of like 10 different things and then, have the interview not to go so well.
That makes total sense. Like, I think of the analogy of just like, if you go to a restaurant and they're like, we can do Japanese food, we can do Korean food, we can do Italian food and Spanish food and Mexican food. You're probably not going to go to that restaurant because it's probably that like none of that is super good, versus if you really are just like, Korean food, like that's what I super love to make, that's what I super love to eat, and that's what this restaurant is about, then the mental model is there, the branding is there, and people are more likely to be like, yeah, Korean food, cool, instead of this mix of like many things and you're just like, I don't really know what you're about. So that makes complete sense to me.
From a manager perspective, when you don't have like a focus, it's really hard for that manager to say yes to you, because they have to think of like, okay, hire this person, how can I best utilize this person on my team, what project are they going to be working on. So when you like have a little bit of everything from a planning perspective, it's really hard for the hiring manager, and therefore they might just say, no, I want someone who's a little bit more specialized in one thing.
Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this information was helpful. Sarah shared a lot of amazing insights when she was on my show Muko's Corner that I definitely learned a lot from. So to watch the video recording, you can become a member today by clicking the join button down below and get full access to that episode and many others. I've also created highlight videos from those conversations with Sarah, so I'll link them all down below about the recruiting process as well as salary negotiations. And also, if you'd like to listen to the audio recording of my conversation with Sarah, it'll be on the podcast version of Muko's Corner. I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, Brilliant. An important part of getting that first job is to really understand fundamental computer science topics such as data structures and algorithms, and Brilliant is a wonderful site to help you do that. Brilliant is a problem-solving based website and app with a hands-on approach with over 60 interactive courses in math, science, and computer science. They all have an element of storytelling, code writing, interactive challenges, and problem-solving as part of their courses. You can use Brilliant to get into the habit of learning new things every day or using it to reinforce existing lessons like data structures and algorithms. I think the courses that they have on there are really amazing and they really help you to fully understand the concepts through all of the interactive storytelling. So make sure to check out Brilliant today by going to brilliant.org/HelloMayuko, where the first 200 people will get 20% off of the annual premium subscription. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you next time. Bye!